For the British Expeditionary Force, July 1st, 1916 was undeniably the low point of the entire war. There were many more mistakes, costly setbacks, and crises to come. But from that day, the BEF forces on the Western Front showed clear signs of a genuine learning curve. But in high summer of 1916, however, operations on the Somme seemed to offer the frontline troops nothing but unending sacrifice. With the slogging match at Verdun already in its 5th month, there could be no question of halting the Somme offensive. There were no longer any thoughts of a British breakthrough. It was now a wearing-out battle, laying down the foundations for a new decisive attack, possibly in mid-September. In June 1915, a British Army officer, Colonel Ernest Swinton, and the Secretary of the Committee for Imperial Defense, Maurice Hankey, enthusiastically worked to convince the British War Department of the enormous potential of a gasoline-powered armored war machine capable of breaking through German defenses on the Western Front. While Hankey produced the first official memo concerning the tank on December 26, 1914, it was Swinton who organized a demonstration of a vehicle built by Killen Strait to senior politicians in June 1915. In attendance at the demonstration of the Killen Strait tractor were 2 future British Prime Ministers, David Lloyd George and the current First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill. Both Churchill and Lloyd George came away impressed by its potential. It was Churchill who, on Colonel Swinton's urging and backed by Hankey, sponsored the establishment of the Land Ships Committee to investigate the potential of constructing what amounted to a new military weapon. The name of the committee was derived from the fact that, at least initially, the tank was seen as an extension of seagoing warships, hence a land ship. The first land ships were produced in secrecy. Its code name, given because the shape of the shell resembled water carriers, was Tank. The name, assigned in December 1915, stuck. Swinton laid down certain key criteria that he argued must be part of the finished design. The tank must boast a minimum speed of 4 miles an hour, be able to climb a 5-foot-high obstacle, successfully span a 5-foot trench, and, critically, be immune to the effects of small arms fire. Furthermore, it should possess 2 machine guns, have a range of 20 miles, and be maintained by a crew of 10 men. The first combat tank was ready by January 1916 and was demonstrated to a high-powered audience. Convinced, Lloyd George, the Minister of Munitions, ordered production of the heavy Mark I model to begin. The lighter, renowned Whippets entered service the following year. The next great offensive on the Somme would be the Battle of Flers, which began on September 15, 1916. This was the battle intended to reap the rewards from all the hard fighting that preceded it. This was a battle the scale of which would have been unthinkable for the BEF just a year before. It also marked a significant step forward in the British tactical approach to the offensive with the first use of the tank. 36 tanks led the way in an attack at Flers. Although the attack was itself successful, due in part to the fact that the sudden appearance of the new weapons stunned the Germans, these early tanks proved notoriously unreliable. This was partly because the British, under Commander-in-Chief Sir Douglas Haig, deployed them before they were truly battle-ready in an attempt to break the trench stalemate. They frequently broke down and became stuck in a muddy trench more often than anticipated. Conditions for the tank crews were also far from ideal. The heat generated inside the tank was tremendous, and fumes often nearly choked the men inside. Nevertheless, the first tank operators proved their mettle by operating under what amounted to appalling conditions. On November 20th at Cambrai, the British concentrated 474 tanks, so that, for the first time, they were deployed for a mass attack rather than scattered in small groups along the front for local infantry support.
But anyway, one day we were in the wagon line, quite a few of us, and somebody came along and said, "Oh, the war's finished." Oh, Well, just go down about half a mile down the road and look in the field there, you'll see. Won't tell us why. Anyway, we went down and quite a crowd there. And there are tanks.
The assault at Cambrai evolved from a tank corps plan for a large-scale raid, the chief object of which was not to seize ground, but to deal the Germans a bruising blow on terrain which, unlike the Ypres salient, actually suited tanks. The Third Army staff expanded the scheme between August and November, transforming it into a major operation against the Hindenburg Line. Both Haig and General Byng perceived advantages in a plan which might not only rebuild the BEF's reputation and revive morale, but also simultaneously draw the enemy's gaze from the Italian front, where the Italians had suffered a near catastrophic defeat at Caporetto on October 24th. Third Army hoped to pierce the Hindenburg system between the Canal du Nord and the Canal Les Escaules before sending cavalry through the breach to secure crossing over the Seine Sea and isolate Cambrai. The main drawback was that the attrition at Ypres and the demands of the Italian front left the BEF with scanty reserves for any exploitation at Cambrai. In short, the plan had outgrown the resources which the BEF possessed in late 1917. Nor was it helped by Byng's desire to employ all the available tanks and infantry divisions in the breakthrough phase. On the positive side, the plan combined some promising tactical elements. These included the decision to abandon the customary long artillery preparation and to permit 1,003 supporting guns to deliver a surprise hurricane bombardment, capitalizing on the new technique of predicted shooting without prior registration of targets. Another novel aspect was the drill for tank infantry cooperation developed by the Tank Corps and endorsed by Byng. 378 fighting tanks, all carrying large brushwood bundles or fascines to assist them crossing trenches, would operate in groups of 3. In each group, an advance guard tank would move 100 yards ahead of 2 main body tanks, its task to subdue German fire and protect the 2 following tanks. The latter would lead infantry sections through the German wires and over the opposing trenches. 98 supporting tanks carried supplies, bridging material, telephone cables, and grapnels for hauling aside barbed wire. Moreover, the British, profiting from the lessons of 3rd Ypres, made greater use of low-flying aircraft to strike German artillery and troops. The opening assault by 6 infantry divisions was made along a 6-mile sector at 6:20 a.m. on November 20th, 1917. The surprise achieved by the sudden bombardment and the employment of massed tanks enabled Byng's formations, in most places, to break through the Hindenburg front and support systems to a depth of 3 miles. However, in the center, the 51st Highland Division failed to take the key village of Flesquières on the first day. Many of its accompanying tanks either broke down short of the objectives or were disabled by German gunners who had created specially trained anti-tank squads. By November 23rd, only 92 tanks remained operational, and because the British cavalry were unable to exploit the initial breach, the old problem of maintaining the impetus of an advance beyond the assault phase again appeared to defy solution. Over the next few days, the Third Army was involved in what was essentially a fierce infantry battle for Bourlon Ridge, west of Cambrai. For all their efforts, the British divisions never completely secured the ridge or neighboring village. They were left with holding a salient 3 miles wide and 4 miles deep. In a surprisingly successful start to the battle, 12 miles of the German front was breached, with the capture of 10,000 German prisoners, 123 guns, and 281 machine guns. Unfortunately for the British, this enormous initial success was effectively canceled out in German counterattacks because the British did not possess sufficient infantry troops to exploit the breach they had created. But the most significant aspect of the battle was that both sides achieved a measure of success with tactical methods which at last seemed to offer a way out of the long-standing deadlock.